Chapter 9. The Name of the Killer. 3 weeks was both long and not long at all. Long, because the thornwood in late winter was endlessly intricate and Saoirse was constitutionally incapable of being in a place full of things she didn't understand without working to understand them. She spent mornings in the lower archive with the archivist, learning the old Sylvain script from the original texts, learning the shape of the sealing ritual from the complete translation, learning the language of her own blood from the woman who had kept its secrets for 17 years. She spent afternoons in the outer ward, watching the border guard run drills, filing away the Sylvain military structure with the same methodical attention she brought to everything. She spent evenings with Marin and Thessaly in a companionship that had formed with the effortless speed of people who recognize something essential in each other. She spent the hours in between with Erevan. Not long, because every hour had the compressed quality of something precious, the specific weight of time that you are aware of even as it passes, holding each day up to the light and looking through it. They walked the outer ward at dusk, when the bioluminescent moss began to glow in the deepening cold and the thornwood lit itself from the roots up like an enormous, slow lantern. They sat in his study after the citadel had quieted, she reading, he reviewing reports, speaking occasionally and not needing to more often than not. She had learned that his silences were not absences, they were the fullest version of his presence, the evidence of someone comfortable enough to simply be. On the 11th day she asked him about the war, the one from a century and a half ago, the one that had broken him into the pieces Vythan had helped him rebuild. He was quiet for a long time. They were sitting on the parapet of the eastern tower, her parapet, she had claimed it, watching the forest go silver in the dusk, and his profile in the last light was the kind of thing she was becoming helpless about. There was a person, he said, finally, in the careful way of someone picking up something that has sharp edges. Someone I trusted with things I did not trust to anyone else. They were working against our people, using what I told them. He paused. I found out during the final campaign. Too late to stop what I'd enabled but early enough to end it. Another pause. The war ended. I survived it feeling like something that had been through fire and not come all the way back. And then Vythan, she said. And then Vythan, who gave me work to do and purpose and the particular mercy of not asking me how I was. A quiet exhale. I have been aware, for some time, that I rebuilt myself around the wrong things. Around duty and distance and the belief that what I'd lost was a lesson rather than a wound. He looked at her sidelong. And then you arrived and declined to let any of that function the way it was supposed to. She felt the smile arrive before she could manage it. You're saying I broke your defense mechanisms. I'm saying you walked through them without noticing they were there, he said, which is considerably worse. She laughed. Actually laughed, the real kind, unguarded, the one she kept for moments that caught her entirely off guard. He watched it happen with an expression of complete helplessness that he was not attempting to conceal, and she thought, there it is. That's the smile he's been keeping for 11 years. It was exactly as catastrophic as she'd suspected. She looked at him for a moment, the whole of him, the general and the man and the 190 years and the leather cord and the ash mark and the eyes that had stopped being unreadable. About 2 weeks ago, Anne thought, I did not expect this. I expected survival. I expected intelligence and strategy and the kind of solitary endurance I had always managed before. She had not expected to be chosen in a Sylvain forest by a man who wrote formidable in margins and kept her dead father's bracelet for 80 years without knowing why. What are you thinking? He said. That I'm glad my brother is terrible, she said. Specifically and only because it resulted in this. He looked at her, then, quietly, warm, carrying the 11 years of absence that made it mean everything, he laughed too. The king's letter arrived on the 14th day. It was longer than she expected. Her father was not, by nature or practice, a man of many words, but the letter ran to 4 pages in his cramped court hand, and she read it alone in her study with the thornwood light falling across it and the resonance in her chest low and steady as it always was now, fully awake, as natural as her own breathing. He confirmed everything. He had known about her bloodline since before she was born, had been told by her mother, had made a choice in that moment that he acknowledged was cowardly, to keep her ignorant, to let her live a small and safe and overlooked life, to protect what she carried by pretending it did not exist. He had spent 24 years watching his illegitimate daughter be underestimated by everyone in his court including himself, and had called it protection, and knew now that it was also selfishness, the selfishness of a man who did not want to choose between his legitimate throne and the daughter who could complicate it. The exchange had not been cowardice. He confirmed this. He had been approached by a Sylvain messenger 6 months before the tree's collapse, anonymous, later understood to be Vython, informing him that the covenant was failing and that the third bloodline's heir would be needed. He had arranged her selection before the crisis made it necessary, had staged his own passivity at the negotiations, had trusted that she was formidable enough to survive what he was sending her into. He had not been wrong, he wrote, though he understood she had every right to be furious with him for the method. She was also, underneath the fury, aware of something she had not expected to feel. Her father, in 4 handwritten pages, had told her the truth. Not all of it, not the full shape of his failures, the years of looking past her, the way he had let Caden treat her, but enough. Enough for her to see him as a man who had made a series of choices that were both wrong and comprehensible, rather than a king who had simply never seen her. She thought of what Erevan had said on the morning of the fracture. You were loved, badly, and from a distance. Yes, it seemed so. On the last page her father wrote, I am sending Caden to the border under house arrest pending formal accusation. Whatever the council requires, the throne will answer. I leave the terms to you. She set the letter down. I leave the terms to you. She had spent 24 years waiting to be given authority over something that mattered. She had assumed, when it came, it would feel like power. It felt instead like responsibility, heavier than power, more permanent, belonging to her in a way that had nothing to do with being given it and everything to do with having earned it. She folded the letter, picked up her pen, and began to draft the terms. She brought the completed draft to Erevan that evening. He read it carefully, the way he read everything, fully, without comment until he'd finished. She sat across from him and watched the fire and waited. You're lenient with Caden, he said, when he set it down. I'm strategic with Caden, she said. He stands trial in the human court for covenant interference. He loses the succession. The mining agreement's avoided. She met his eyes. But he lives. He is my brother, not a good one, not one I intend to forgive quickly, but mine. She paused. The Sylvain don't need his death. They need the breach acknowledged and the agreements voided. This does both. Erevan considered. The council will accept it. I know. I wrote it for the council. He looked at her, that look, the permanent warmth, the thing that had stopped being hidden. And the annual renewal clause. Included. 3rd page. She held his gaze. It requires the third bloodline's representative to present at the Thornwood Citadel each spring equinox. Witness required from both signatory bloodlines. She paused. I suggested the Sylvain witness be the Ashmark general, given his existing role in the original exchange. Something crossed his face that she felt all the way across the desk. That is an extremely transparent piece of treaty drafting, he said. Yes, she agreed. I find plainness more efficient than performance. The corner of his mouth moved. The almost smile, her almost smile, the one she had named without meaning to. So I've heard. She stood. He stood. The fire was low and the study was warm and the Thornwood outside was fully dark, lit from below by the moss, the way she loved it, the way she had not expected to love anything about this place and had found herself loving everything about it, the light and the air and the deep old hum of it and the man who moved through it like he was part of its structure. She crossed to the desk. He came around it, meeting her in the middle the way he always did, never making her come all the way to him, always closing half the distance. She reached up and placed her palm flat against his chest, over the ash mark. He went completely still. "I'm asking," she said. He covered her hand with his, not moving it, holding it there, against the scar, against the warmth beneath it. He looked at her with everything fully present, no management, no reserve, no general, just the man who had been keeping himself from this for weeks with admirable and finally exhausted discipline. "The equinox is in 6 days, he said. Low, careful. "I know. The covenant is not yet resealed. "I know." She held his gaze. "I'm not asking about the equinox. I'm asking about now, about whether you will let this be what it already is." A long, charged moment. Then he turned his hand, the one covering hers, and brought her knuckles to his mouth. His lips pressed against them, slow and deliberate, not a courtly gesture but something more personal than that, something that said, "I have been wanting this," with a degree of restraint that has cost me considerably. She felt it everywhere. When he lowered her hand he kept hold of it. His thumb traced across her knuckles, unhurried, the particular warmth of his attention made physical, and he looked at her in the firelight with those still, clear eyes. "Yes," he said, "it is what it already is." She let out a breath she had been holding for 14 days. He drew her in, one arm at her back, unhurried, giving her every second to decide, and she went, and her head rested against his chest, and his arms settled around her with the particular steadiness of someone who does not do anything without full intention and intends, fully, to stay. They stood in the warm study while the fire burned low and the thornwood sang quietly outside, and 6 days waited between them and everything after that, and she thought, "This is the thing I did not have a name for." She thought, "I have one now." End of chapter 9. Next, chapter 10, The New Vow.